If you listen to Russian propaganda, you'll hear of a Ukraine war that is going precisely to plan. Russia's soldiers are rampaging through Ukraine, the Kremlin will tell you. The Donbass is on the verge of falling, and every drone that Ukraine launches into Russia is taken out by a world-class air defense system. It's only a matter of time before Ukraine falls. It's been a matter of time for 4.5 years now. And digging beneath the stories the Kremlin tells reveals a very different reality. Russia is winning, all right. It's created the perfect soldiers, and they're scoring big victories. But there's just one problem. None of it exists. Russia's only winning army is a fake. Putin is lying to you and his own people, and he's using AI to do it. If you've been doom-scrolling military content recently, you may have seen some interesting videos. Clips of interviews with military men claiming to be part of Poland's army have been spreading, showing these soldiers railing against Ukraine. There are claims of high levels of crime among refugees who have escaped Ukraine and now live in Poland. The soldiers also attacked the Polish government, Germany, and the European Union or EU, with claims suggesting that Poland is well on its way to rejecting Ukraine, the EU, and frankly everything that the country has fought to become part of ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union. But none of it is real. The news broke on July 21st. As its army fails to gain any significant ground in Ukraine, Russia has turned to outright lies in a desperate attempt to create discord and discontent inside Ukraine. Russia isn't relying on fake versions of its own soldiers for these lies. Those soldiers are too busy dying in Ukraine. Instead, Russia has created AI deepfakes of Polish soldiers, which it's then manipulating into criticizing Ukraine and its army. Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation revealed the Russian fakery in a mind-blowing report that showcases just how far Russia is willing to go in its desperate attempts to win the propaganda battle. The center says analysis has shown that all of these soldiers are completely AI-generated characters. It's also worth noting that the visual style and content delivery mechanisms are identical to those used by Russian AI bot farms. The clips, which all show men in Polish military uniforms, have been circulating on several social media platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. However, close examination of the videos shows several signs of manipulation, including several of the faces being far smoother than they should be. Other signs come from the words used in the videos. Poland's NASK State Research Institute has also been looking into the videos, and it says that some of the language used indicates awkward phrasing of the Polish language, suggesting translation from the original Russian text that was written for the statements. There are also stray Cyrillic characters thrown into the mix. Then there are the uniforms. Despite it being relatively easy to find pictures of Polish soldiers in their uniforms, it appears that Russia didn't even bother. The uniforms seen in the clips seem to be amalgamations of Russian and Belarusian military wear rather than Polish. Russia is banking on people not paying attention or simply not knowing enough to spot the signs, and it's working. One YouTube channel alone has posted about 50 of these clips, the top performing of which has reached 300,000 views, Polski Radio reports. Other videos, including one generated back in October that claimed to show Polish soldiers calling for the seizure of the Ukrainian city of Lviv, have already been easily debunked because of a visible watermark from the AI model Vio that is seen on the video. This is dirty from Russia, insidious, but it also isn't surprising. The Kremlin knows that it can't really claim that the Russian army is doing well in Ukraine. It tries, but the reality is clear for everybody to see on the ground. So Russia has created a fake army, filled with non-existent Polish soldiers, to score propaganda points against Ukraine and attempt to convince the world that a key ally has turned its back. Why Polish soldiers? Though Ukraine and Poland are still allies, there is tension between the two countries on which Russia has pounced. Earlier in 2026, a rift started to form between Poland and Ukraine. Poland's president, Karol Nawrocki, even stripped Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, of the Order of the White Eagle, which is Poland's highest state honor. That happened as a result of Zelensky approving the naming of a Ukrainian military unit as the UPA, which stands for the Heroes of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. Many in Poland took that as an insult. There are historical tensions surrounding the UPA name, as a group with this name took part in the killing of 100,000 Polish people in Volhynia in eastern Galicia during World War II. Poland classifies this as a genocide, and the naming of a Ukrainian unit after this group was a step too far for one of Ukraine's staunchest supporters. Russia has seized the opportunity to have its AI-generated Polish soldiers bring it up in many of the clips that have surfaced on social media. Despite the obvious conflict, Poland and Ukraine are still allies. On June 25th, the BBC reported that Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk called for truth and mutual respect during the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Gdansk. But there are still signs of tension. Zelensky skipped this iteration of the event, choosing instead to send Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko. However, Zelensky has said that Ukraine would remain open to all meaningful formats of engagement with Poland in order to try to avoid conflicting interpretations of the difficult and painful chapters of our shared past, adding that he was grateful to the Polish people for their support and cooperation. Russia's propagandists were like moths to flames after seeing all of this unfold, and they've been flooding the internet in an attempt to create more division ever since. The Kremlin obviously thinks it's being clever here. Even such obviously fake videos can have an impact, as many simply don't question whether what they're watching is real or not. Others simply can't tell. TechRadar revealed that in a January 2026 piece where it reported on a study conducted by AI video company Runway. Quizzing 1,000 participants, Runway discovered that the volunteers were only able to correctly identify whether a video was real or AI 57.1% of the time. That's barely better than a coin toss, and it shows how easily Russia can get away with manipulating the minds of people who are perhaps only half paying attention when they watch these kinds of clips on social media. The Kremlin doesn't need people watching these videos. It wants them listening to the fake messages. In fact, Russia needs them listening because it knows that exposing the reality of what's happening in Ukraine would be a disaster. Russia's new fake army is getting views and influencing opinions, but its real army is failing massively. Stalled in Donetsk and losing ground elsewhere, Russia's soldiers are dying in droves. Russia is losing between 1,000 and 1,500 soldiers every day, and the numbers keep on climbing. In June, Russia lost 39,490 of its troops, and according to Al Jazeera, it's struggling to make up the numbers as it recruits between 24,000 and 30,000 contract soldiers monthly. This is the reality that Russia doesn't want you to see. An army that is failing in Ukraine and death on an unimaginable scale. So Russia creates fake Polish soldiers wearing hybrid Russian and Belarusian fatigues to badmouth Ukraine, Poland, and the EU in language that is clearly translated from Russian text. And the fakery gets worse. What we're seeing here is far from an isolated incident. It's part of a much bigger campaign of disinformation that Russia has relied on to conceal the reality of Ukraine for years. It's also not just Poles who are being deepfaked. Ukrainian soldiers have experienced the same treatment. This is exactly the kind of thing that we cover here on the Military Show. We give you insight into the reality of Russia's invasion. If you like what you see and want to see more, the subscription and notification buttons are just a click away. Beyond the fake Polish soldiers, Russia is also creating videos that see nonsense spouted from the mouths of AI-generated Ukrainian soldiers. Euromaidan Press reported on this phenomenon on July 4th, noting that Russia is flooding social media feeds with videos of fake Ukrainian soldiers and authority figures, including rabbis, which it's using to spread disinformation throughout Ukraine. These fake videos have different messages from the ones discussed before. They're designed to turn the Ukrainian people against their leadership. Those people are being sent to die in a war, the AI-generated soldiers claim, and also that politicians can enrich themselves by buying villas and other expensive items. One of these videos received around 900,000 views, the outlet reports, and they give Ukraine a serious problem. An AI-generated video can go viral and spread like wildfire in a matter of minutes on social media. Fact-checking videos are reactive, often taking several hours to get online, and don't engage as well because they aren't as inflammatory. The disinformation age is upon us, and Russia loves it. It's been loving it for years. These videos are just small parts of entire bot networks of social media accounts that have been running fake videos for years. For instance, August 2024 saw the Ukrainian media outlet Texty run an investigation on a TikTok network containing 2,000 accounts, all of which were fake, all sharing anti-mobilization hashtags. There is also documentation of AI-generated videos of Ukrainian soldiers supposedly surrendering to Russian forces in places like Pokrovsk, all designed to convince Ukrainian people that their country is losing the war against Russia. What has changed in 2026 is the nature of these videos. In the past, Russia has used AI content to spread fake videos involving AI-generated people that have no real authority. That's not what we're seeing in 2026. Whether through the advancement of AI or Russia getting a better grip on the tech that it's using, this new wave of videos focuses on supposed authority figures. Soldiers, military leaders, and others claiming to be religious or political figures are now delivering the messages that Russia wants to send. Again, none of it is real. That doesn't matter. If a fake video goes viral, it takes days to undo the damage, assuming that viewers even bother to look beyond what they've seen in the first place. The Molfar Intelligence Institute has delivered a list of what to look out for if you're unsure if you're watching AI-generated content or not. Visual defects such as the uncanny valley effect on faces caused by irregular blinking, the absence of micro-expressions, which are clearly lacking in the fake Polish soldier videos, and sound desynchronization are all clues. So are source anonymity and the same video suddenly appearing across dozens of accounts within minutes. Check the accounts too, the Institute says. If they're new or contain nothing but the same types of videos, that's a pretty good indicator that you're looking at a bot farm. Hundreds or thousands of likes, often accompanied by generic comments within the first few minutes and hours of a video going live, could also serve as clues. Russia is betting that most won't follow these steps. That's why it engages in this type of fakery. What's striking here is the differences that are becoming increasingly apparent in how Russia uses AI versus Ukraine's use of the technology. Russia creates fake AI-generated armies of people spreading false messages across social media. It's all about disinformation for Russia. Because Russia knows that it can't compete with Ukraine when it comes to tangible military applications of using AI to actually win a war. Ukraine is miles ahead of Russia when it comes to using AI to carry out its strikes. We see that in the Middle Strike campaign Ukraine has used to destroy the Russian near rear for much of 2026. That campaign uses AI-enabled drones capable of autonomously detecting and striking targets behind the front. One of the standouts is the Hornet drone that has a 300-kilometer range and uses AI to guide itself towards targets, making it incredibly difficult to stop using electronic warfare countermeasures. We've also seen Ukraine use AI in other interesting ways. On July 23rd, United 24 Media reported on Marichka. This is an AI-infused battlefield planning system that is designed to reduce the time taken to make important battlefield decisions. With this system, Ukraine can take the time needed to make such decisions down from up to 12 hours to as little as a few minutes, all because the AI is capable of analyzing and reporting on dozens of documents in seconds. In the past, human commanders would have needed hours to sift through these documents. In a war that is as fast-moving as the one waged in Ukraine, that delay could be the difference between carrying out a successful strike on a Russian target and losing that target because it's gone into hiding. There is a very interesting contrast at play here. Ukraine uses AI to get battlefield results, while Russia uses it to create fake soldiers and videos designed to trick the minds of people who aren't paying as much attention as they should. The fakery doesn't stop at AI-generated video. Seeing how well Ukraine is doing on the battlefield, Russia has resorted to lying through its collective teeth about what's happening on the ground. In its July 22nd assessment of Russia's invasion, the Institute for the Study of War, or ISW, reported that Russia is continuing to make maximalist demands for peace, including the ceding of the Donbass. Russia backs those claims with reports of territory taken that at best can be described as exaggerated. At worst, outright lies. The Russian MOD amplified a Russian propaganda Telegram channel on July 22nd, claiming that Russian forces seized 2,226 square kilometers of territory in the first 6 months of 2026. ISW has observed evidence to assess that Russian forces seized a net total of only 81.1 square kilometers thus far in 2026, due in part to a significant Ukrainian spring-summer 2026 counteroffensive, and seized or infiltrated 626.85 square kilometers thus far in 2026, the ISW reports. Over 2,100 square kilometers of claimed territory not being in Russian hands is a pretty major exaggeration. And it's one that Russia has doubled down on with its claims that its forces have overrun the fortress-built city of Konstantinivka. Those claims started circulating in early July and were immediately refuted by Ukraine's general staff. Ukraine continues to hold its positions in the city, the general staff says. CNN says that independent mapping sources and video testimonials from Ukrainian soldiers also prove the claim false. What Russia actually seems to be doing is sending infiltrators into the city, having them wave flags for videos and then run back into their hidey holes, where they await imminent detection by Ukraine's drones. It's all lies and propaganda, just like the AI videos. But then that's the Russian way. Lies are Russia's real weapon of mass destruction, and they have been wielded like that for decades. The irony in all of this is that Putin himself may be as much of a victim of these lies as anybody else. Russia's leader has a long history of distorting the truth, perhaps now to the point where he can't even see the reality of the false version he's created for himself. This is the man who still calls a war that is getting close to 5 years long a special military operation. He will parrot the words of his sycophant generals when they tell him that Russia is making massive gains, and he won't even question why Donetsk hasn't fallen yet given those gains. Putin falls for his own propaganda constantly. He did it when he invaded Ukraine. Those he employs to tell tall tales for him said that Ukraine was weak and ripe for the taking. Putin thought Russia's almighty military would need just days to win. We've seen how that worked out. Putin may lie shamelessly and constantly, but that has just led him to create a world around himself where the truth is impossible to determine. Today, Putin is a man who seems intent on surrounding himself with nothing but his delusions. In May, Forbes reported that Putin spends most of his time moving between underground bunkers, surrounded by security personnel under strict orders to check everything and everybody who comes near. He doesn't know reality. He hasn't seen it in a very long time. The hilarious irony in all of this is that Putin himself would likely be tricked into thinking that the AI-generated videos of fake Poles and Ukrainians were real if he watched them. We can't even know for sure that Putin ordered the creation of these videos. Perhaps he has no idea that they even exist. But coming back to those videos, they are of course evidence that Russia continues to lie. But they're also signs of desperation. Of Russia trying to create a la-la land of its own making to distract from the dismal performance of its troops in Ukraine. Russia needs people to fall for the message because actually paying attention unravels the lies in a heartbeat. Don't fall for it. Russia is led by a man who surrounds himself with toadies and purposefully detaches himself from reality. What we see spreading on social media right now is just another example. Russia can't win in Ukraine with its real army. The only victories it's scoring now are with an army of robots and fake soldiers that don't exist. How about this for a dose of reality, Russia? You're on the verge of losing Crimea as a result of a brilliant Ukrainian isolation campaign that shows just how effective AI can be when used for fighting rather than fake videos. What was once Putin's greatest geopolitical victory has been turned into a burden on all of Russia. And you can find out how Ukraine did it by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this video, we have plenty more coming up at the Military Show. Hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to ensure that you're among the first to see our latest analysis of the Ukraine war. And thank you for watching.